Tens of thousands of Virginians have disabilities. They, along with their families or caregivers, must navigate a system to get the services and support they need to live the lives they deserve. Often, individuals with disabilities, or those who care for them, come to a crossroad where they must face an impossible choice. The choice they must make is between two important things: financial health for the entire family, or quality care for their child with a disability. The care provider's mental health, or their loved one's physical care. Completing mountains of paperwork, or spending time providing care to the one they love. Every day they face an or, where someone must lose in order for another to thrive. Join DePaul Community Resources as we take a deeper look at the disabilities system in Virginia through the eyes of those who navigate it every day. We hope you'll see the or in these stories. We hope you'll ask yourself, what if it wasn't an or? What if it was an and? This is Jamie Sneed. She works with DePaul Community Resources and is the mother of a child with a disability.
People with disabilities and their family members don't want your pity. More than anything, they just want you to understand them. And frequently when our daughter was younger, we would tell them, we have a daughter with special needs or disability, and people would say, I'm sorry. And I would be like, don't be sorry. She's fantastic. She's fabulous. And I want other people to know her and see how fantastic and fabulous she is. So people don't want pity. They want you to understand and empathize with them and see that it is hard to raise a child with a disability. It's hard to constantly be fighting systems and people that stand in the way of them getting the services they need to be their best selves. So that would be the number one thing I would want people to know, is that we just want understanding and empathy and welcoming, but we don't want your pity.
So what is the disabilities system in Virginia? Well, the answer to that is complicated and complex. The system involves the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, which operates the Developmental Disabilities Service System, Virginia's legislative body, the General Assembly, Virginia's Medicaid program, and numerous other agencies and organizations. The system was created to support individuals with disabilities and those who care for them. But is it doing enough? Meet Glenna McVoy and her 19-year-old daughter, Joy.
She's a joy to have. I just love her determination. Like, she wakes up every morning smiling, like happy, ready, raring to go. And I was like, if more people were like that, this world would be a much better place, you know? Joy was diagnosed at birth with Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. She is also autistic and has developmental and intellectual disabilities. Caring for her is 24/7, all day, every day. Everything I do for myself, I have to do it for her as well, from putting her to bed to waking her up, going through the day, dressing her, feeding her, taking her to the bathroom. It's constant.
Every day, Glenna and Joy wake up and wait. Wait for life-changing services and support in the form of a developmental disabilities waiver. What is a waiver? Virginia has 2 waiver programs that offer support to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They are intended to help children and adults with disabilities live successfully in the community rather than in institutional settings. The Commonwealth Coordinated Care Plus waiver, often called the CCC Plus waiver, provides attendant, respite, and nursing care, as well as assistive technology and environmental modifications. While there is currently no waiting list for this waiver, it requires those who have a disability to also have a medical or nursing need. This requirement can be problematic for individuals with a developmental disability who are otherwise healthy. The Developmental Disability Waiver, often called the DD waiver, encompasses 3 tiers of waivers that provide a wider array of services than the CCC Plus waiver. Individuals must meet Virginia's definition of a developmental disability to qualify for one of the 3 DD waivers. They offer similar services to the CCC Plus waiver, plus access to enhanced services and supports to help individuals live successfully in their community, such as employment and day options like community coaching, day support, or supported employment, and residential living options like supported living, sponsored residential, and group homes. There is currently a waitlist for the DD waiver, and eligible individuals are categorized as Priority 1, Priority 2, or Priority 3 based on their specific needs and available supports.
It's been 12 years. I probably expected it to be no more than a year. However, we just continue to advocate, and we've been through every iteration of every change of the system, and we're just trying to make it day to day until we can get more help and I can offer her better services and more services so that she'll have even more ability. I just can't understand being a priority 1 for 12 years. 12 years as a priority 1 makes absolutely no sense to me. And in every form of the system changes, she's always been a priority 1. So there hasn't been a time where she wasn't a priority 1 on the wait list. So we're just waiting and continue to wait. Hopefully something will come available soon. It's been somewhat difficult. I mean, my faith carries me. So with that, like I said, I'm constantly researching, trying to find programs, trying to find things of interest that we both can do. But there's a daily struggle. I mean, it's struggle even mentally for me and emotionally, just, that my hands are tied to some degree that I can't even do more.
While Joy waits for her DD waiver, Glenna struggles to make ends meet. Years ago, when Glenna was working full-time and Joy was going to school, Joy's health began to decline. Glenna believes it was rooted in anxiety, stress, and separation from her. Glenna was forced to make an impossible choice: financial health for her family or quality care for her child.
Well, she was having seizures every day for a while. It was for months that she was having seizures every day. And I would get to work, and sometimes before even I arrived at work, I would get a call saying she's having a seizure, you need to come get her. We would go back and forth to the doctor trying to find out what was the purpose or the reason, the cause of the seizures. And what I noticed is she would only have seizures Monday through Friday. So there was something going on at school, and the anxiety level there was causing her to have seizures. I couldn't concentrate at work. So it really wasn't a decision. It was something that her health mattered more than anything, and I felt, it was my responsibility. So I eventually resigned and told them I needed to be home with her full time. And because whatever she'd gone through, it was traumatizing, and she needed more one-to-one care. So we really didn't have a plan. Like I said, it was just kind of, we were thrown into it, and it being thrown into it, you learn to adapt. My car was repossessed. I had to move. It wasn't easy. So it's just took it one day at a time, and we continue to take it one day at a time.
As she waits, Glenna advocates.
I would like to see Joy and others, be able to have the ability to do more, to be more accepted, and allowed to, reach whatever goals they have. As long as I'm advocating for her, I feel like she has a better chance at getting what she wants to accomplish in life.
For now, Glenna and Joy will keep waiting, keep advocating and fighting for a better system, and keep hoping that help is on the way.
Oh, I think it would work wonders. It would allow her time away from me time away from her. It would give her someone else to be social with. It would allow her, it would free up some of my time so I could actually make a plan for her, her care, and we could accomplish more goals. I would also be able to receive more services and take her to things that she enjoys doing and that will help her gain more skills. A conglomerate of things would happen. It would be life-changing.
Glenna and Joy are not alone. More than 14,000 people are on Virginia's DD waiver waiting list today. Over the last 10 years, the DD waiver waiting list has more than doubled. That's 14,000 of your neighbors who qualify and are eligible for the DD waiver, but are told they must wait. 14,000 caregivers who are without access to backup caregivers to provide much-needed respite. 14,000 individuals who are without opportunities to connect with their peers at day support or supported employment programs. 14,000 families who are without access to financial assistance to make ends meet while they provide round-the-clock care to their loved one. Ann Hallbach was notified in February that her son Tim, who has cerebral palsy, would be receiving a DD waiver. They had been waiting for 8 years.
When we were first put on the waiting list, we were told that it might take as much as 10 years. But I had a lot of hope when the system was revamped a couple of years after that into priorities. And we were told that Tim was priority 1 because of his needs, meaning that he would need services within a year. But then 6 years passed and he was never the one selected for the DD waiver. So that was definitely a hard time, and things began to get increasingly difficult for my family because my husband has multiple sclerosis, and his health was declining, his needs were increasing, and soon I was giving full-time care to both of them. You feel like you're making difficult choices all the time, that there are times that they both need something and you have to weigh out how to accomplish that. It's stressful for the caregiver to deal with those feelings. So when we finally got the call, I felt overwhelming relief that we would be able to make a more secure path for Tim's future. And I was also so grateful for all the people who helped me along the way to finally realize that goal for him. He wants to know that choices are open to him in the future and that he can choose who he will live with and who will work with him. And I think those are the main goals. He wants to be more involved in the community and to have those opportunities to form relationships.
So why the wait? Well, it mostly comes down to money. The system as a whole is underfunded, and funding must be allocated by the General Assembly to open more DD waiver slots and fund the providers of these DD waiver services at a rate that covers the cost to deliver them. Here's Jennifer Fedura, the Executive Director of the Virginia Network of Private Providers. She advocates at Virginia's General Assembly on behalf of providers of DD waiver services.
Virginia, like every state, has to prioritize how they're going to spend their tax dollars. Education is always an important issue. Transportation is always an important issue. Potholes get lots of attention, as do crowded roads, particularly in urban areas. But the disability community needs equal attention and equal standing in the system.
But opening more waiver slots is not as simple as it may sound. When slots come available, the Community Services Board that assigns the slots must have case managers to help individuals navigate the system to access services. And the organizations that provide DD waiver services must have the workforce to operate their programs. In Jennifer's opinion, workforce limitations are the biggest barrier to opening more DD waiver slots today.
In order to provide the services you need, you have to have the people to do the work. And we all know the workforce issues that we have. But because so many of the disability services are solely supported by Medicaid, if they don't, in a commensurate way, increase the Medicaid payments, then the providers public and private, cannot increase the wages to meet the new requirements. And having said that, the new requirements are simply the baseline. You can walk into any local fast food or local gas station and see a sign on the door that people are paying well over minimum wage and a hiring bonus for staff, for essentially unskilled work. What we do is very hard and skilled labor. It's very skilled labor. So we have to be able to compete with that. And so right now, the workforce is the issue, workforce is the crisis, workforce is the message. Ask me a question and the answer is going to be workforce.
There is no simple solution for improving the disability system in Virginia, but improvements are needed for those waiting outside the system, waiting for a life-changing waiver, but also for those inside the system who are also faced with impossible choices every day.
Hey, I'm Kim Misha. This is my son, Woody Misha. He's 31. When he was a month before his 21st birthday, we found out he had a rare genetic disorder called Wilson's disease, which is an autosomal recessive disease. My husband and I have a recessive gene. He got 2 of them. And his body doesn't get rid of copper. So for 20 years, he had a fully functioning body, but copper accumulated in his brain for 20 years. And we found out because he had a car accident. He hit a tree in our neighborhood in Midlothian, was airlifted to MCV, and they saw heavy metal in his brain. So that was a roller coaster. That was in November of 2011. And by February of 2011, he's 6'5". He was down to 130 pounds, and he had a feeding tube and couldn't talk anymore. So it went downhill pretty quickly. So our lives changed quickly, eh?
With the DD waiver, Bob and Kim Misha serve as Woody's sponsored residential providers through DePaul Community Resources.
My husband and I take care of him, and he's really total care, like 100% care. But he's all there. He still totally enjoys, he's still him. He still has the same sense of humor. He can't talk or walk or swallow, but he's totally still him. And the copper is in an area of his brain where it affects, like, none of his muscles work. He's been tube fed for 10 years. He can't talk. He doesn't swallow very well. I mean, like, literally none of his muscles work. It also affects his filter, so that the filter's gone. Like, he has much, like, his inhibitions are not really there so much. So he's totally him, but he's not shy anymore. He's totally, yeah. And it's just him. He's always been I sound like his mom. He's such a good boy. But he was always a nice kid.
DePaul is just one of many organizations in Virginia that offer sponsored residential services. Sponsored residential programs provide families and caregivers financial assistance, guidance related to daily care and community involvement, healthcare coordination, and other support services. To be eligible for sponsored residential services, an individual with a disability must qualify for a specific DD waiver known as the Community Living Waiver. The Mishas are grateful for the Community Living Waiver and for the sponsored residential program, but wish the system would allow the program to be more simplified and streamlined. Navigating the complex and confusing system creates an or. Instead of giving parents and caregivers the ability to spend more time caring for their loved ones, they must spend time fighting for needed services and equipment.
It's just really hard. It gets exhausting. That's it. I mean, I'm not going to give up, but it's exhausting. Like to get a wheelchair, it was a year-long process to get a new chair for him when it's time to get a new chair. And it's a year-long of, like, following up on appointments and making every phone call. And it's just I can't imagine what somebody who doesn't have 2 parents at home taking care of them, I can't even imagine how they get the services they need, honestly.
Melissa Cash, who cares for her sister Beth through DePaul's sponsored residential program, feels that strain too, and the struggle of transitioning from family member to caregiver.
I describe myself as a loving person, a caring person, and I'm sensitive to feelings.
I became her provider in 2016 after our father passed away. And the reason was she was in a group home for about 8 years prior to that. And she went into then she became she went into a sponsored residential provider's home. And after our father passed away, it was very abrupt. She had such a hard time that I knew she just needed to come home. So Beth doesn't have physical challenges, and there's lots that she can do on her own, but Beth is very, very needy. So her emotional issues are at the top of the list of what I have to address every day, all day.
Over the years, Melissa has seen the way the system can work. In the early days, when the waiting list was much shorter, Beth didn't have to wait very long for her community living waiver. Services under Beth's DD waiver have given her opportunities to grow and learn and be involved in the community. Melissa's residential coordinator at DePaul has helped her manage the paperwork and meet the guidelines to remain a sponsored residential provider. But she still believes the system could be better. A more individualized system, with streamlined processes, more manageable paperwork, and a greater focus on the mental health of individuals with disabilities and their caregivers.
I think the hardest thing is they try to make it one size fits all, and it doesn't. Every person with special needs has a certain need that another child or another adult does not. So it's very hard to find it a tailored fit for you. That's one of the biggest challenges.
Cynthia Hurt is also a sponsored residential provider with DePaul. For 20 years, she and her husband cared for an individual with a disability, who we'll call C. Their time as compassionate caregivers has not been without challenges, but they watched C blossom in their home, with support, with life skills, with love.
Well, the blessing is the ability to be able to give extended love, to show them a different way, to give them other options, to expose them to positive things, new ideas.
Seeing how they navigated challenges together, Cynthia struggles to picture what C's life might look like without them, without sponsored residential services, without the DD waiver.
And if it wasn't there, I can't even imagine how rough it would be for her. She could have been institutionalized because the support would not be there. It would be a roadblock.
Sadly, institutionalization used to be a reality for thousands of individuals with disabilities in Virginia. In 2008, the U.S. Department of Justice opened an investigation into Virginia's institutions for individuals with disabilities, called training centers. The investigation found that the state violated these individuals' civil rights by housing them in institutions instead of providing opportunities to live in their community. After negotiations, the state settled with the Department of Justice, agreeing to close the majority of its training centers and move most individuals with disabilities into community settings. Since then, Virginia has successfully moved thousands of people out of training centers, and institutionalization is no longer the standard of care. However, we're still failing people. The intent of the DD waiver system is to give people access to care in their own home and community at a substantially lower cost to taxpayers than what it costs to provide care in an institution. So why have we drastically reduced the number of people in state-run training centers, but drastically increased the number of people who are waiting for the DD waiver?
We are looking at community-based home situations for families to care for their loved ones in their home. And so I love that Virginia is making strides to look at family settings, community-based settings for people with disabilities. And that's promising. What's not promising is that people with disabilities sit on a waiting list for those community-based services. And so we have a lot of work to do, but we've also come a long way.
Virginians with disabilities deserve better. What if more people took the time to listen to them, to empathize with their experiences, to ask for their ideas about ways the disability system can improve?
Start with the process and the way that the scoring system, or even if there should be a scoring system, I think parents of disabled people should also be involved. parents and caregivers in creating the process, because we know what works, we know what doesn't work. When you just have people with the education and no hands-on, sometimes it gets lost. And if I can enlighten someone and give them more knowledge about that so that they can understand that, and also have a greater understanding as to why the waivers are necessary and how they help these individuals, I think that would be the message. Help me help you.
And what aid am I going to get for $9 an hour? You're not. You're not going to get anybody who stays with you and learns how to actually talk to Woody. Because the first challenge you have with Woody is how to talk to him, and he can totally talk. This is thumbs up, yes, no, and I don't know.
I think that there's a lot of talk about person-centered care and that is the ideal. I don't think we're at the ideal. I think everybody needs to be looked at all through the process as an individual, more than a set of statistics. And I think that one of the most crucial things is having more caregivers in the system, and for them to be recognized for their contributions, to be receiving competitive salaries and benefits, because it's such an important job. And we've seen it in our own lives. You form a relationship, but then a person is offered a job that they can't refuse because the pay is so much higher than what is offered working with a person who has disabilities.
Well, I think sometimes when you look at documentation and you read in literature or laws, people need to sometimes take a step back and feel their pain or their anxiety. I went to a seminar years ago at Virginia Beach, and it was powerful. And what they did is they had everyone in the room, they said, close your eyes. Do not open up your eyes until I finish the speech. And it talked about, how about I scoop you up? You don't even know where you're going. And I say, I'm going to take you from your environment, which you're used to. And I'm going to tell you where you're going to go, and you have no say-so. So you end up at this home, and you tell them, open up your eyes. This is your new family. This is where you're going to reside. How would you feel? What would you take away from that? Would you act out? Would you speak if you're able to speak? How would you let someone know that that's what you want, or are there any other options? And sometimes when you take a step back and see, how would you feel? So once we opened up our eyes, it was powerful, because we got to understand, hey, how would you feel if that was you? What would you take away from that? So a lot of times when people make laws and make rules, they making them based on what they think, not what they feel. And if they took that feeling, I think they would make things a little different.
What if those people who took the time to listen, who did their best to empathize, what if they took action? We hope these stories and the words of those with lived experience have inspired you to take action, to acknowledge that the disability system can be improved, and to start taking steps to make that happen. Here are some steps you can take to encourage change. Number 1, start conversations. Talk with your friends and neighbors about Virginia's disabilities system. Ask them why it's okay for Virginia, the 10th wealthiest state in the country, and frequently rated number 1 in business, to be the 39th state in the country for how well we care for individuals with disabilities. Share this video with them. Visit who'smy.virginiageneralassembly.gov and learn who your state representatives are. Our state-level elected officials are the only ones who can devote more resources to improving the system. Reach out to them. Send an email. Make a phone call. Ask for a meeting. Demand better for those we serve. Number 2, become an ambassador. Not sure how to start a conversation? Join our ambassador network, and together we'll make change happen. Number 3, give to help us spread the word. This documentary would not be possible without underwriters. To help us continue our advocacy and storytelling efforts, make a donation at depaulcr.org/donate. And number 4, create an environment of inclusion. Find opportunities to interact with individuals with disabilities and those who care for them. Listen to their experiences. Ask questions. Build relationships. And wherever you are, foster an environment of understanding, empathy, and inclusion. Embrace differences. During the production of this project, DePaul reached out multiple times to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, DBHDS, and the Department of Medical Assistance Services, DMAS. DBHDS did not reply to emails or respond to calls. DMAS indicated they would provide a statement, but did not do so before we completed production. How can we move this system from being one of impossible choices to one where people with disabilities are empowered to have a voice and choice in their lives? Imagine a system that provides access to individualized care when it's needed, instead of one that tells people to wait 10 years for the services they need today. Imagine the life-changing power that system would have for the 14,000 people who are waiting.